Evangelist Gary Cuthbert, Living Testimonies Ministries, Outreach, 2022. Biblical story of Jesus feeding 5,000 people. Key scriptures: Matthew 14:13-21, Mark 6:30-44, Luke 9:10-17, John 6:1-15, Mark 10:27. Mark 10:27. And Jesus looking upon them says, With men it is impossible, but not with God, for with God all things are possible. Introduction. The story of Jesus feeding the 5,000 people was recorded in 4 Gospels, though with some slight changes in the recordings. It was a noticeable and miraculous event because Jesus fed the people with a few loaves of bread and fishes, coupled with the reminder of 12 baskets after the people were filled. In the story, while Jesus was going about his ministry, he heard the bad news about John the Baptist, that he had been beheaded by Herod, the king. After then, Jesus' disciples also returned from the missionary journey he sent them initially, and they gave a report of all the things that happened on their way. Jesus took them with him in a boat on the Sea of Galilee to a remote place for rest and prayers. People in the area got to know that Jesus was near, and a great crowd came to see him. Some brought their sick friends and family. Jesus took compassion on them, taught them about the kingdom of God, and healed those who were sick. When it was getting late, the disciples asked Jesus to send the multitude away so they could go into the town and get where to stay and eat as well. But instead of Jesus to grant their request, he put a question to one of the disciples called Philip, asking him where to buy bread for the people. Jesus knew what he was going to do, but he asked Philip to test him, in which Philip replied that even 8 months' wages would not be enough to give each person even one bite of bread. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother and one of Jesus' disciples, brought forward a young lad that has 5 small loaves of barley bread and 2 small fish, though he had more faith in Jesus than Philip, but still wondered how that could help the situation. Jesus ordered the crowd to sit down in a group of 50, took the 5 loaves, looked up to heaven, gave thanks to God and passed them to his disciples to be distributed, and did the same for the 2 fish. Everyone ate to their satisfaction because Jesus miraculously multiplied the loaves and fishes. Then he told his disciples to gather the leftovers, so nothing was wasted, and they collected enough to fill 12 baskets. Jesus was able to feed 5,000 men exclusive of women and children with 5 barley loaves of bread and 2 fishes, which testified to the fact that Jesus is the source of life for all. The disciples were focusing on the problem of how to feed so many rather than focusing on God, the great provider. When we are confronted with an unsolvable situation, as Christians, we should remember that nothing is impossible with God. Philip and Andrew seemed to have forgotten all the miracles Jesus had done in the past. As Christians, no matter the crisis we might be facing, we should always call on God for help. There are great lessons to learn from the story of Jesus feeding 5,000 people, and, in this article, some of the lessons will be mentioned. Jesus, the great teacher, John 6:35. When the people came to Jesus, he had compassion on them and began to teach them. This shows that Jesus is always ready to feed us with spiritual food when we hunger for it and seek him for it. He is ever ready to lead us in the way of truth and guide us in our ways. As Christians, we should endeavor to always seek God daily and be nurtured spiritually to have a balanced growth. We shouldn't just be comfortable with physical food, but we should always nourish our spirit man too. Jesus, the Good Shepherd, Psalms 23:1, John 3:16. Jesus demonstrated a good shepherd that will never allow his flocks to lack nothing. From the story, when he saw the crowd, he had compassion on them and fed them both spiritual and physical food. As a good shepherd that always made his sheep priority, Jesus' compassion was without bounds, and anywhere he went, his priority was still the crowd that followed him. From the story, it established the fact that Jesus is the Lord that saves his church. His compassion is so great that he gave his life for us who are born sinners. Jesus uses people to bless others. Jesus could have found other means to feed the people, but he decided to use the people around him as an example that when he is ready to bless anyone, he will send people to them. Jesus used the simple meal of the boy to make a great impact in the lives of the people. By Jesus using the disciples and the boy to bless the crowd, it reminded us as Christians that God uses us to bless others as well. When God asks us to be a blessing to others, We must have faith and do it because just that simple amount or act can have a huge impact on so many lives. Nothing is too small for God to use because He will always show Himself strong through our weakness. Jesus is the ultimate. Colossians 1:17. There is nothing too difficult for Jesus to do, and from the story, He surpassed all expectations. He provided the needs of the people and exceeded it too. We learn through this that in Him, we have peace because He is full of greatness, and when He does things, He does it to perfection without any form of regret. He is a dependable master that will never leave you or forsake you when you seek Him wholeheartedly. God is larger than everything, especially any obstacles we could be facing. We are reassured of Jesus' love for us through the story of Him feeding the 5,000 people. Conclusion: Jesus used a small meal to make a great impact that is very noticeable and miraculous, which shows that no matter how small or insignificant you may feel in this world, God can use you to do big things if you will allow Him to lead you. His power is unmeasurable if you will submit to His will and purpose. Trust and have faith in His sovereignty, and He will grant you the desires of your heart. Through the above biblical story, that as Christians, and if we believe, have faith, and trust God wholeheartedly, together we are stronger doing the will of God and not the will of man. We also must remember we are in this world, but we are not of this world. A faithful servant in His holy name, Evangelist Gary Cuthbert.